Welcome to the Rialto Marketing Podcast. Today's episode is a revenue acceleration series interview where we interview seven-figure B2B professional service firm owners that are actively trying to grow their business and get to the next level. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly so that you can learn from their experience. Hi, I am Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing, where we believe you must remove your revenue roadblocks if you want to accelerate growth and reach your goals faster. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. I am super excited to have George Bardisi from BVoIP with me today. George, thanks for joining me.
Happy to. Happens to be a pretty nice day outside. Hopefully it stays that way and we're not in Florida with any weather events, it seems.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Colorado and it's super nice out today. And I don't think we've got any weather events in the forecast either. So I think you and I are going to be in good shape, at least.
I think
so. So before we dig in, and talk about your journey a little bit, want to ask you a few rapid fire questions if you're ready to jump in with both feet.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. Very quickly, what do you do? How long have you been doing it?
Yeah, I actually started off in the IT services business back in 2001. Fast forward to 2014, we started a software company out of our MSP and broke it off into a separate entity. And so I've been working with IT and managed services companies from the other side, from the vendor side, since 2014 till present. And then in the beginning of 2020, started another company, which is more of a community approach to again, still IT and MSP land around events and marketing specific to the vendor side and like kind of integrating that to the people who are actually doing the work on the IT service provider side. So it's been an interesting journey. It's a little bit of a domino story because one kind of stems from the other. But more or less, I've been in the sandbox one way or another since about 2000.
So what you're telling me is you have nothing going on.
Nope.
Yeah.
Just boring over here. Just TV, Netflix, and all good.
Yeah, just watching paint dry.
Exactly.
So, man, it's a long time. Since 2000, 2001. What's the most important lesson you've learned?
Consistency. No matter what you're doing, right? I think people, myself is no different. When you start something, you don't finish it, or you have a good idea, but then you don't execute it. Or you don't go all the way to the end of whatever that idea was, and then you maybe get distracted and go somewhere else. So I think I could talk about an hour just on the word consistency, but I think that is part and parcel. Probably the most important word I could say is the lessons, right? So many things stem from it. Business is hard, but if you don't take it to the end, then I think you don't actually see the full outcome of whatever you started. So
that's a really good one. And I obviously, as a marketer, I see that consistency is huge. Yeah. So many people just give up because they think they're not seeing results. They're not gaining traction. And that is, you can adjust, right? Shift course, make changes, but you got to keep doing it.
I know it's cheesy, but as a guy from Philly area here, I'm sure everybody's seen a Rocky movie sometime in their journey. Going the distance, right? I mean, It's the same thing, except people usually don't make it to the end of whatever road that is. And I think that's where you get incompletes on everything. And then you think, hey, I wish I could have, I would have, but you bailed out too quick or somewhere along the way. So, I mean, I know that's a bit cliche, but we definitely drink that Kool-Aid here in Philly.
So you mentioned it, right? Running a business is hard. We run into roadblocks all the time. Some we see, some we don't until we hit them. And do you have any kind of mantra or anything motivational you say to yourself, share with the people on your team to kind of push through those times?
Yeah. I mean, again, using my Philly references, sorry, but we had Andy Reid here, as the coach of the Eagles for 14 years. And he would always come out in his press conferences and say, well, it starts with me. I got to put my players in the best position to win the game. got a little old after 10, 12, 13 years, but I digress, as the message is still right. Turn off the outside noise, right? A lot of people, are the people who try to, kind of judge other people tend to not want to go and do the work themselves. Start with worrying about what you're responsible for, right? Take care of your house. Worry about what you can control. Work on the thing that's in front of you. So putting my players in the best position to win the game is about what we can control. And don't worry about the outside noise. We'll deal with that when the time comes. And I think that comes back to the distractions and comes back to the, people thinking that we're not going to get where we're trying to go. And you got detractors always out there, but no offense, but people are lazy, and the people who say negative things on stuff that you're working on just aren't putting in the effort most of the times themselves. So let's just show them how it's done, right? Worried about what's in front of you.
Man, I love that. It is so easy for us as anybody, but especially as business owners, to lose sight of all the things that are happening, and focus on all these things and worry about all these things that we can't control. And it's just a waste of time. I mean, none of us are immune to that. We all fall into that trap at times. But I think having the self-awareness to go, you know what? No, I need to focus on the next. One of my mentors said, focus on the next measurable step, right? The next little thing you can do, and you just start knocking things down. And for me, at least, that helps eliminate that overwhelm of looking at all this crap really that's out there that I can't control. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that, George. So I want to dig into your companies a little bit, man. You've got 3 companies. But you touched on this a little bit, but break them down a little bit more for us, because I love everything that you're doing is interconnected and related in some way. It's not like you've started 3 completely, agnostic, separate businesses. They're related, and I think there's a lot to be learned from that. So,
yeah, I mean, just a quick, kind of expansion on what I started on earlier, which is out of school as, younger George. I think I'm still a pretty young guy. Technology was something I just generally kind of took a really strong liking to, and I self-taught, and I broke things and I reassembled them again, and I figured out the answer. And I love that problem solving puzzle story, right? And looking at the picture and finding a new path that's not necessarily predefined. In technology, there's not necessarily one road that always leads to Rome. There's 1,000 ways to ultimately get to where you're going. I tend to, get crafty sometimes in trying to get to that end destination, but that's kind of part of the fun of it. Run, and then, having a vision's great. Executing it, that's the really hard part. And as you go through the journey, it all on paper, you're constructing a football team. On paper, it looks good, but you got to play the game. So, as I was going through my journey, I'm like, man, this whole concept of standardization, right? Having customers with all these different pieces instead of one piece in what could be 30, 40, 50 categories, pretty much creates a glass ceiling that you'll never break through. And so, early on in the game, right, everyone's like, well, you need to standardize that and keep all of the things that, across all of your customers kind of the same, so that even the things that are unique to those businesses are this much out of the whole. And so pain generated me a path that ultimately I didn't find a really good answer to. That's what started out of my IT services company that I ran, for many years and still run. That's what started our software company, which is around the unified communications and telephony and VoIP and messaging space. Because as an IT service provider, I'm I don't really, I got all these customers and everybody has a different thing. And for me to keep track of all of these manufacturers, vendors, I'm not even charging properly for that, right? I'm just burning time, and time you cannot get back, or at least if the time machine's out there somewhere, let me know. That being said, we're well, if we didn't find the answer and we searched pretty far and wide, spent a lot of time and money to look, and we're square peg round hole, doesn't really fit. Why hasn't somebody, kind of paved this road? We're all right, let's do it. Let's build it. Let's figure out, how to create the answer for our sandbox that doesn't seem to really be out there. And so like out of our own pain, out of our own need came well, if we can figure out how to solve this problem for ourselves, everybody else has got to have the same problem that does what we do. That's what led to Company 2. And, that created, a lot of different conversations and traveling and, IT service providers from around the globe and like airplanes and trains and boats and automobiles and everything that comes along with moving around the planet. And it's fun because you really meet some clever people out there that do things that you just never thought about. And that's kind of the cool part of the human condition. And then like, once I realized, once I kind of crossed the aisle, I went from IT service provider, still there. And then I started vendor land, which kind of is like this curtain that you cross over, train tracks that you switch over. I realized that, man, it looks a lot different from the other side. And you really get treated pretty badly in vendor land, to be honest. And so I said, there's, just like I said earlier, right? I like to look at how do I get to my end destination and come up with a crafty, creative way to get there that may not be super transparent at first. I applied that same logic to, well, we need to really break the format of how the IT industry works, the events around the IT industry, the conferences, the user groups, etc. And let's do something different. And that's what really spawned the third company, which I call MSP Initiative. So the first company, my MSP, Bardesi Enterprise. The second company, BVoIP. Third company, MSP Initiative. And MSP Initiative really was, right time, right place. We actually went into the pandemic. Everybody remembers that, I think.
Yeah.
And everything shut down. And like all of the rules, if you remember, were about inside. And we're like, so why don't we just go outside? Why don't we go get in a tour bus, go around America, have IT service providers loan us their parking lots, and we'll go tailgate edition, right? We'll do this outdoors. And that was the beginning of MSP Initiative, where it was like, hey, we can bring that community to your backyard. You don't have to really travel far, and you don't have to get on a plane, even if you couldn't. You can just like drive down the street and we'll be outside in the fresh air and like create that community effect that everybody loves from the events that they're really used to. So that's where MSP Initiative started. And now it does a bunch of different things, but like that was the like right time, right place, right angle, if you would, because everybody seemed pretty comfortable going out into the fresh air. So we use that to our advantage. And in a nutshell, that's where these three spinning plates that orbit IT service provider and MSP land came from.
I love it, man. Thank you for sharing that. Now, running one company is hard enough. How do you do it with three?
No sleep, Monster energy drinks. There's a lot of truth to what I just said, but people, just like any business, organization, team, nonprofit, whatever, can't do it all by yourself, even though I try, trust me. And I'm bald. I pulled it all out. No, I mean people, right? Like nobody's going to be able to AI themselves to everything. I don't care what you think. I'm sorry. You're going to need people to like solve problems as part of all three lanes in my world. And consistency, right? And keeping those people in the right positions to do what they need to do so that each lane is moving and not in a traffic jam. So a lot of, over communication. I can't stress that enough, especially with the remote thing, right? Like there's a reason why offices, have been a thing for a long, long time. Like the natural idea, whiteboarding, bouncing things back and forth with people being in the same space does work. I mean, it works really well. And when you break people off into their own caves and, like you lose some of that, kind of idea sharing, communication, whiteboarding. And so I adopted remote work 2004 and 2005, well before the word COVID was even in the dictionary, I guess. And it's a different way to do business. And it does create a time problem. What do I mean? It takes longer for things to happen, right? It takes longer to train employees. It takes longer to get through certain ideas. It takes longer to like learn about the other person's tendencies because you're not in front of them. I'm sure everybody's figured this out by now, hopefully, because we are forced to go through it a little while ago. But it's just the natural thing that happens when you're in front of people does not happen behind a computer screen. So just drags things out. So that's the downside to the remote thing, and this is why you need to over communicate and like between the messages and the text messages and the phone calls and the the video and screen time, right? Like it's dozens and dozens and dozens of interactions per day in order to try and keep that flowing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And as you're talking through it, I'm kind of thinking to myself, like with 3 companies, getting the right people in the right seats, obviously super important. As the person that's managing all of those people, have you found that because you have 3 companies, it kind of forces you to trust and just give them the guidance and let them run with it because you just can't?
Yeah.
Does,
So
does it force you to do that?
yeah, I don't know if you follow Gary V, right? He's pretty
Yeah.
popular in the social feeds. I definitely subscribe to the way he sees things. Like I don't want to babysit you. I appreciate hey, your first job or you're an intern, like definitely need a lot more supervision. But if I'm hiring you as a professional, I'm not going to just throw you out on a raft and say, figure out how to get back to the shore. I'm definitely going to work with you on a regular, but like, I'm also going to I'm going to give you that rope. Right. And like back to you're either going to climb that rope or you're going to hang from that rope. I mean, not to be grotesque, but like I don't and can't and don't have the bandwidth to micromanage every single person in every single position. It's an open door. I answer my phone practically at all hours, to the point where sometimes my wife throws my phone out the window. But at the end of the day, like I encourage people to say, if you're stuck, call me. You got an idea, you're not sure, call me. You want to make sure you're down the right path, call me. But like, don't be in a position and then I come back and just say, hey, checking in, what's happening, give me some sort of update, and you're stuck and have been stuck for a while. Like that doesn't work either. So like, like you have to set that expectation up front. And like, quite frankly, and there's no crystal ball to this part, but some people are not self-motivated enough, time regulated enough, and organized enough to really succeed in that scenario.
Yeah.
Some people are better off in a traditional office environment, and that's where they just shine. So it does take a lot of weeding through different people to figure out if you have the right person in the chair. And back to the Gary V isms, hire fast, fire fastest, promote fastest. I mean, I do subscribe to that. I really do. And quite frankly, like I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like, hey, I'm looking for, an outcome. I'm looking for the right person in the right position on my team, on my football field. And like, if you're not the right quarterback, I need to get a different quarterback. If you're not the right offensive guard, I need to get a different offensive guard, right? Like, the punter's not doing the job. Let me go find a new punter. And like, I'm not trying to be like cold about it. I'm just trying to be honest, right? Like, let's not, drag it out if we don't have to.
I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about marketing. Surprise, surprise. One of the things you talked about in the pre-interview when we connected was, this guerrilla marketing approach that you've taken to brand awareness, events, and various collaborative efforts.
Yeah.
Can you share some of the stuff that's working well for you?
The trade show booth has been around for decades, before I was born, to be totally frank. And it may be the single worst investment in the business. Unfortunately, IT and managed services, that sandbox, thrives on these trade show booths that, quite frankly, are absolutely soul crushing when it comes to any sort of ROI or traction or whatever, brand awareness, whatever you want to call it. So like, I understand that everybody has like Xerox that blueprint over and to the point where like you can barely read the page coming out of the copy machine. So like, for me, it's like, I don't care about that part. I understand, you need to just look the part, be in the room. But like, to me, if you're like chained to that 6x6, 8x8, 3x3 space, you're in trouble. And I would expect very little to come back from that. You need to have conversations with people. And that means you need to go outside of the blueprint. And quite frankly, every event organizer or conference organizer probably hates this conversation, but it's true. 50% of the people that go to any event, circle one on the calendar. I don't care which one it is. never even go to the trade show area of said event. So you already lost half of them. And then depending on how many people are exhibiting or sponsoring, right? Let's, think about a really big one. Let's call it 120, 150. The chance that the 50% that do make it into that room get even around all of those stands one time is so low. I don't know how you actually benefit. I really don't. So like at the end of the day, I understand, as a guy who's doing events and planning, I understand there's a hard cost to a lot of these things, and like that cost is shared, and I get that. But everybody has to like go outside of the blueprint in order to extract their value, because the way that is designed most of the time is that the person that's throwing the conference gets the value, and the person that's co-sponsoring that as an exhibitor gets almost no value. So like, how do we hack that? Again, going outside of the situation. Here's some suggestions that work for me. One, be in the same place as the attendees are. If that means going to breakout sessions, go to breakout sessions, labs, workshops, show up in the chair next to them, ask the questions right next to them. Now, all of a sudden, they begin to view you as, oh, hey, this guy understands, what I'm going through. And like, he's not just trying to give me a brochure and sell me something. So that's number one. Number two, collaborate with other vendors in the space, right? Don't go at it just on your own. It's okay to say, hey, you're trying to get to the same guy. You're trying to get to the same guy. You're trying to get to the same guy. Let's pool our efforts. And like, let's throw maybe some money in the pot together to do something like joint dinners or joint happy hour bar tabs, or, like, let's take somebody out to something off site, a group of people off site, so that we can, kind of extrapolate, some one-on-one time that you're otherwise not getting. Oh, and by the way, man, I can't tell you how many bar tabs at how many lobby bars have ever been created in the industry. Like the hallways, the bar, the curb, basically everywhere other than sometimes the actual event space is the best way that granular conversations happen. And that's what you want. Some cheeky ways that we've extracted value. Hey, it gets about, I don't know, close to midnight, and people are, have had dinner probably 4 or 5 hours ago. How about the 25 pizzas that show up spontaneously at the right time, where people are like, oh my God, I was dying, I needed some food. All of a sudden, like, I'm not trying to sell you something, I'm trying to create a good experience. On some of the bigger stuff, right? Like where we've said, hey, I'm going to do a rager party, and I'm going to go to every vendor and say, hey, what's the limit on your credit card where you won't get in trouble and have to go upstairs and ask for permission? Throw that into this pot. Let's do something big and crazy so that we can actually get the thing that we can never get out of the host conference, which is the attendees list. I don't know why that's, like they're guarding it like it's Fort Knox. Yeah. So I'm actually, my default is off menu. I don't know how else to say that, right? Like, I'll do what I have to do so that the host event holder feels like I'm not just roguing their event, and be respectful there. But I also need to make sure that I walk out with something rather than just being there handing out pens and bouncy balls. And I don't know what other else, people are throwing out there to just like throw into the grab bag. So all of that to me just makes no sense.
I want to break a few things out here, and it's funny you talk about trade shows, because the MSP IT space has more trade shows than I mean, it seems like there is one like at least 2 or 3 times a week.
Somebody told me the other day that there was 324 events on the schedule for 23. And I was like, I didn't even know that number is real. But if it is, like, you're talking about 10, 20 events a week. I mean, like, it's crazy.
It would not surprise me, because there are so many shows. It is just, it's unreal. But I love the fact that you're talking about, look, off menu, right? Thinking outside of the box, and just touching on, we need to be where the attendees are, which to me comes back to target market, right? Understanding your ideal clients, right? When we talk about marketing, we talk about, look, you don't want to cast a wide net. You want to, if you're fishing for trout, you want to cast a line in the trout pond down the street, right? Mm-hmm. And which is exactly what you're talking about. Look, if most of the people aren't paying attention, and most of us that have been to trade shows and worked booths know this, you're standing there and people are walking by doing everything they can to avoid eye contact. Yes. So it's like, why put yourself in that position? Like you said, go where they are, whether that's offsite events or workshops, trainings that are going on. And I love how you touched on having those granular conversations, right? Because when you're sitting in a workshop and there's a break or you're just starting to chat, that's how you start to get to know people. And it's those one-on-one interactions that have far more power. I
mean, that interact, like, you're the marketing specialist, but I saw on a slide at a event recently that it's now 28 touch points. It used to be like 10, and then it was like 15, 20. Now it's 28. That's a lot of touch points. But that one-on-one granular conversation cuts it down dramatically. You know what I mean? And like, you're hoping that the work that you're doing post-event gets those people to actually commit to a call, a demo, a trial, whatever. But like, the work that's a long game. It is a really long game if you're doing it that way. I'm not saying it doesn't work. But if you can cut the football field down in half and you can like get that person to a point where they're like, yeah, I'm willing to commit to that. And it like was one conversation, one beer, one slice of pizza, like that just changes your situation. And by the way, like, everybody needs to know their math, right? Like, Tim, a lot of people think marketing is this, like, I don't know, invisible thing. But like, if you understand that, hey, if I can walk away from this event with 15 qualified leads and if I can close 7 of them, my event's been covered. Like, I know I'm just using very small numbers, but I'm just putting in perspective. Then all of a sudden it's much more attainable because I think I could have 15 conversations one-on-one or more rather than the 2,000 people that show up at the event. And you're like, 5 people showed up to my trade show booth. I mean, it's not exactly comforting.
It's funny you say that, George, because I think you're spot on. Too many people go to things like trade shows or any marketing activity without having a clear understanding of why are we doing this? What is the end goal? And we've got to understand that first and foremost so that we can then identify, okay, like what's the metric we need to track that's going to tell us this was a successful event for us. And, if the goal is to get X amount of leads and we convert at X%, as long as we know what the lifetime value of that client is,
there it is.
Then we can understand, okay, because it's not just the initial sale, right? Especially like with something like BVoIP or your IT company, there's recurring revenue there. Clients stay for a certain period of time. And we need to understand what the whole entire value of that client is. And then we can determine, okay, yeah, this was worth it or it wasn't. But so I love how you brought that up, because anything we do from a marketing standpoint, we got to know why we're doing it and then identify the metrics that are going to help us determine whether we've been successful.
Knowing your math is maybe it's in the top 3 most important things. Like, for, real quick, like, I know that by the time somebody gets to a point where they're about to onboard with BVoIP end to end, right, more or less costs the company about $2,000 as a net new partner, right? That's from, the cost of getting on the plane, the sponsorship of your 6x6 space, whatever giveaways you're giving, dinners, bar tabs, man hours that you're going to do after the event, and follow-ups and calls. And like, by the time you extrapolate all of the time and hard costs and labor, that's what our cost is, more or less, right? So like, I've actually quantified that for my team so that they understand that if they don't do their part as that water's flowing down the pipe, that's how much money gets burned, by losing a prospective new partner that's, come through the pipeline. So it's important to understand the math.
Yeah, super important. And it doesn't have to be difficult either. I mean, look, I was a math major, so I can dig into the weeds on that kind of stuff. But most of the important marketing metrics are not complicated. Just focus on the most important ones. But so we talked a little bit about trade shows, little offline stuff. I know from a sales and marketing standpoint, you guys are taking an inbound and an outbound approach, which I think is fantastic, right? Multi-channel. hitting people from different areas. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So like content, like listen, and in your space, anyone that's watching a marketing podcast, like anybody that's ever is like, hey, SEO and paid ads and blogs and it's like content takes a while. But if you consistently create good content and you do it at a there's that word again, consistency. You do it at a regular interval over time. Like we still have people hit landing pages and blog posts and videos that we created 4, 5, 6 years ago that are showing up in the front door and be like, hey, I saw this. I want to learn more. And we're like, sure, absolutely. Like you need to create, not copy and paste content, legitimate, authentic things that your people that you're trying to target would care about. And you need to do it, and it needs to feel right. And we're not trying to sell them something. We're trying to educate them, right? And the more content you create like that, over time, it will pay dividends. But you need to stick at it for a while. And what's a while? Like I expect content that I created 12, 14, 16 months ago to start paying off now. Like just starting now, right? That's what I see. And like between the content creation, which is largely a magnet to drag people off the internet into your space, and then the outbound marketing, which is a combination of events and webinars and like email marketing and like all of those other things that you're pushing things in front of people. You plug those two things together, and now you have traffic coming from both sides. Now, this is really rudimentary, but I would say that on an annual basis, we generate in our database something like 12 to 18,000 new contacts a year. But think about that. That didn't happen in year one. If I go back to when we started measuring that, it started off at 4 to 5,000 contacts a year. And then it turned into 7 to 9,000 contacts per year. And then it just grew and grew and grew. And so, by the way, not all of those are going to agree to a call or a demo or anything like that, right? Like you think about if I generate 12 to 15,000 contacts, for example, less, single digit percentages of that list will actually come through as a call or a demo or a trial, right? And but on the flip side, let me give you some quantifiable things. On average, so far in 2023, contacts that we never talked to, didn't see at a trade show, didn't email, didn't market, didn't call, didn't send a postcard in the mail, right? Just like showed up at the front door, knocked and said, tell me more, are just coming off the internet. It's about 40 to 60 booked calls a month. So but that didn't happen over time. That happened because we kept on creating content. And then maybe what happens is somebody's like, hey, I did see you online saying you were going to that event. And then I was like, oh, I saw them before. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I have that need now. Let me go talk to them. And but we never knew them, right? Like we had never interacted with them. We had never got them through an event. They just showed up net new, right? So that does happen. But back to the word consistency, right? You can't just do a little bit and then stop and say, well, it didn't work. Let me just stop because I'm spending money and it's not working. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Get better at it. Tweak your message. It does work over time.
George, you dropped so much value there. I want to pull out a few things because there was a ton of good stuff in there. One, I want to make sure people don't feel like, hey, look, you need to be everywhere and be in every marketing channel. You don't.
Yeah.
You need to find the ones that work for you, that are going to get you in front of your ideal clients. And like you've hit on multiple times, you need to do them consistently. And all of those things should be supporting one another, right? Like you've got content to generate awareness, right? But then you're doing some of these other things like webinars and email, social posting to continue to stay in front of those people. And you touched on this, man, there's people in our database that we've never even talked to. And then all of a sudden they're reaching out to us, and they're reaching out to you because you have been consistent. Not everyone in our audience is ready to buy, right? The need or the pain is not great enough, but you're staying in front of them long enough till they get to the place where that need or pain is great enough, and they think of you because you've stayed in front.
And to that point, real quick, I just want to expand for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm not a negative marketing guy, right? Hey, like having a problem with this company, call us. We'll solve your problem, right? Like there's so many people that do that, by the way, and it's really just not tasteful at all.
Yeah.
But sometimes people stumble, and like when somebody else is having a problem in VoIP land, for example, the MSP is like, yeah, I went with this other company. It sounded good. The window shopping looked great. I bought, it was going well. And then like things have been going downhill, and like I haven't been able to not have a week without a problem for the last X number of months. And like now I'm at a point where I need to reevaluate, and like I see you out there, people say good things, you know, poking around a little bit, you know, let's talk, right? And it's like right time, right place, right? But part of, you know, that whole right time, right place is because we were consistently putting things out there to the point where once the event occurred where they needed or, you know, convinced themselves, all right, I've had enough, I need to go do something else, we're there, you know?
By being consistent, you're giving yourself more opportunities to be at the right place at the right time. It's not, you. So yeah, I love the fact that you brought that up. The other thing that I think you touched on that is super important, you talked about creating content that is relevant to the audience. And one of the benefits that you have, and we don't all have this, but we can do the work to make this happen. When you started BVoIP, it was because of a problem you had as an MSP. And so you have a deep understanding of your MSP ideal clients for BVoIP and the problems that they have. You know how they speak about things, all of that. And that is a key to marketing success, period. So huge advantage that you have, but we all have that information at our fingertips. We just need to do the work. And frankly, that's one of the things that we help people do is go through those steps so that you can enter the conversation that your MSPs are having in their head because you are one.
Yeah, 100%. Like I've been in the trench. I've been underneath the desks. I've worked on the holidays and weekends I didn't have. You know, dealt with the customers that were like, oh yeah, I did that, when they absolutely lied to you and didn't do anything. Like I feel the pain. I went through the pain. I understand the pain. Remember, no hair, bald, pulled it all out. So like when I'm having that conversation, right, I don't have to manufacture something to be in, you know, in the know. I'm just like, hey, you know, like, tell me what's happened and tell me about your business. Have you run into this before? And they're like, oh my God, I don't even know what to do anymore with these people. And I'm like, that, you know, and then interesting conversations spawn from that. Like,
yes,
it's okay to fire your customers. Like, if they're not going to work and you're negative because they won't do what you asked them to do, then maybe it's time to cut the cord.
Yeah. This has been a great conversation, George. I want to ask you one more thing before we wrap things up, which is knowing what you know now. Anything you do differently?
Yeah. I did a lot of things earlier on in the journey the hard way, right? I just had this castle and moat mentality. Like everybody was my competitor. You know, I can't share the secret sauce. I made a major shift, you know, halfway through where I'm like, there's a lot of people out there doing what I'm doing in this effectively community I didn't realize existed. And I'd rather learn from other people so that I don't have to, you know, run into every pothole and speed bump on the planet for me to get to where I'm trying to go. And man, that would have saved me years, literally years of pain and suffering because I was literally just trying to do everything on my own. So you have peers, they're willing to share if you're willing to share. So break out of your basement, your car, your office, whatever, and reach out and like actually start to have those conversations. And you will be absolutely amazed in what short period of time you will learn from the people doing what you do. And I encourage it. And the more, the merrier. There's a lot of more formal ways to do that, like peer groups and accountability groups and all this other stuff. But man, don't be afraid that you're worried about some dude that might be on the other side of town that's going to compete with you because you went somewhere and you just didn't want to share. Take some time out of your business. I'm not saying every day, it's thousands of events. I feel like we talked about earlier, take some time out of your business, go talk to other people, not trying to sell you something. They're you just somewhere else, and like have the conversation. And I wish I did that earlier. It would have, maybe I still have hair.
Yeah. Well, it's that's a shift from scarcity to abundance, right? And I think that if you can get to that place, you will get where you want to go so much faster because our peers can help us avoid the missteps we haven't made that they've already made, and vice versa. And so whatever you feel like you might lose by sharing this information, you will gain so much more from it. So thank you for sharing that. Honestly, that is one of the best answers that anybody has said since I've been asking that question. So thank you, George. I appreciate you, man. Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm on all the platforms. There's only one George Bardisi to my knowledge, Bardissi. So bvoit.com, mspinitiative.com, or just Google me, put me on LinkedIn, George Bardisi. I mean, I like to communicate. If I'm not in person, then digitally, not hard to find. I'm always doing something somewhere.
I love it. We'll make sure those links are in the show notes. If you find multiple George Bardisis, it's the one. He's the one from Philly. So just easy to remember. George, thank you, man. Those of you that are watching, listening, thank you. I appreciate you. George shared a bunch of great stuff on marketing, what's worked for him, what's helping him grow. If you want to know which of the 9 revenue roadblocks are slowing down your growth, you can do that over at revenueroadblockscorecard.com. You can also always connect with me over at rialtomarketing.com. Be happy to chat with you. So reach out there. Thank you. Till next time. Take care.